Welcome back, everybody. This is the Me, Myself, and I playthrough of the main event for the game Unconditional Surrender, published by GMT Games, designed by Salvatore Vasta. We are going to go into the second half of the April 1942 turn, basically the Western and Soviet operations after the Axis and then the end of turn things, replacements and all of that. So we're going to quickly clear off all of this so we can see what we're doing. The Russians have to kind of pay attention. They do have 22 production points. They have 4 airplanes, that's 12, and they also have 3 flipped infantry right here, a shock army and 2 regular infantry. So they'd have to save another 3, which would be 15, which means only really moving 7 units here. So I'm going to be very sparse with my attacks. I think I'm only going to attack in 2 places. The places that strike me as the most important is by Bryansk. Oh boy, I can only attack in 2 places because of my... well, I can only attack with... I think I'm going to leave the Romanians alone. So I'm going to actually activate the 4th Shock Army, and he's going to move 1, 2 to here. And then it's him and this Shock Army. That's a 2nd, and this is a 3rd production point. So that puts me down to 19. And then they're going to assault the 4th. The Germans do have an airplane that they can throw in. But let's see what this comes out to. The Russians are going to... oh boy, that really hurts, doesn't it? So they'd be 1 for this shock army here. Add in a shock army, he adds 2. Add an infantry, that adds 1. And then I'm going to go ahead and throw my tanks marker here. Because I'm going to be -2, 1 for the weather and 1 for this. So I'm going to throw in my tanks marker. I think I still have 1 left. Yeah, I'm going to throw my tanks marker in and the one in the north. I'm going to put it at spot on the map so I can get on the turn track easier. That gives me a +5, and then I'm -1 for the weather and -1 because he's in woods. And then the Germans are +2. So it's a +3 to a +2. I figure if I can get this hex here, now I'm threatening of some kind of a breakthrough by having Bryansk surrounded in the future or something like that. So the Russians roll a 2 +3, which is a 5. And the Germans chose not to throw in their airplane because they're at pretty good odds here. Rolled a 5, +2 is a 7. 5 to a 7, it should be a diamond. It is. So nothing happens there. And then the other Russian attack is going to be, well, let's put this tanks on the turn track so we don't forget. Leave them lying all over the board. We're going to activate the 2nd shock, the 1st shock, and the 37th. It comes out the same whether I add in the 2 shocks for +4 or start with a +1, add 2, and add 1. I end up with a +4 and then -1 for the weather, and the Germans again are a 2. I could throw in an airplane. Again, I'm at a 3 to a 2. That's pretty good odds for the Germans, and I want to save my sorties because I want to stay ahead of trying to stay ahead of the Russians on the sortie game. It's important going summer 42 to kind of be at 1 or 2 sorties ahead of them. Right now I'm 2, so I'm going to try and hang on to them. So here we go. The Russians roll. Oh boy, a 2 +3. They're not rolling very well. That's a 5. And the Germans roll a 5 +2 is a 7. That's kind of what we had up top. So nothing happens there. And that was another 3 production points for the Russians. I have 3 infantry to flip, which is 3, and 4 aircraft to get back, which is 12. That's 15. I could move like 1 more guy somewhere. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to take you know, I really don't want to move anybody. I kind of like where everybody is. It's kind of frustrating with the Russians to not be able to do anything. Oh, I know what I was going to do. I'm going to spend a production point here And I'm just going to move across the river so that I can retreat into that city or build something there if I need to. So there's my extra production point that I spend this turn. That leaves me with 15. I went and did the Russians before I did the West. I'm such a doofus. So we'll go turn back the hands of time here. We're going to do the West activations. Little bass backwards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think it's time to try and push the Africa Corps. So we're going to take the Western Desert Force. What are my national tracks? Let's go see if I get any successes out of this. So he's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 down the road, and then 2 more. So he has 2 movement points left. And he's going to attack the Africa Corps. So he starts off at +1 because he's British, and the Germans are +2 because they're German. We go to combat commitment. The Germans don't have anything on their card because they use their tanks in Russia. And the British can throw in tanks and an aircraft, which is what they're going to do. So they throw in an aircraft, and they're going to use one of their tanks markers, since they have 2. And that gives them, because the desert is always fair weather, that gives them +2 for the airplane and +2 for the tanks marker. So it gives them +5 to +2. So off we roll. The British roll a 4 +5 is a 9, and the Germans roll a 3 +2 is a 5. So we go check. A 9 to a 5 is a DR. So we force the Africa Corps to retreat. They are going to go to 5439, so that they're behind the ridge. And the British will go, the Western Desert Force will go ahead and take that space. They only have 2 more movement points, so they can't attack across the ridge. And they can't move up adjacent to Brook because they're in zone of control. So that ends that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So for me to do that again, I'm going to need to take the airplane here is going to fly up to 54, 44, 41, sorry. And takes a sortie there. And then the BEF is going to activate. I'm getting a little rambunctious with my British here. Getting back that factory has made me bold in my old age here. They will go 1, 2. The ridge is +1, and then clear hex. So that's 2, 3, 4. So they have 6 left. And then they spend 2 to attack the Germans. And again, I'm going to throw in my airplane, and I'm going to throw in my other tanks marker. And before I forget, I'm just going to go ahead and put those tanks markers on the turn track so we don't forget them. And that gives me, again, a +5 to a +2. So where would the British roll? A 5. +5 is a 10. Ooh, British roll good. Much better than the Russians did. And then the Germans roll. A 3 +2 is a 5. So let's go check a 10 to a 5. Whew, the Germans just barely missed the DD result, so they only have to retreat. They only have 1 legal retreat space, which is 34, 38. And then the BF is going to take that space. They have 4 movement points left, and they have sorties left with their aircraft. So they're going to be going basically at +3 to +2. They're going to spend 2 more movement points, attack the Africa Army. It's a +3 to a +2. And the British roll, there we go. A 2 +3 is a 5. And the Germans roll a 6 +2, which is an 8. So if you go to a 5 to an 8, it is an AS. So the Africa Army says it stops here, south of Tobruk. But the British have basically kicked the Africa Corps back 160 kilometers or so. I think these are 80-kilometer hexes. And are set up to kind of repeat that next turn. I did need to add a sortie here. Forgot to put a sortie on my airplane. Okay, and then the British do supply. They have 3 units for sure that they have to keep in supply. So they're going to do... Actually, they're going to do 3... 1, 2... Up, here we go. They're going to do 1 on the guy in Suez, and then the Americans will do the other 2. Because they get their 2 back easy. I think I didn't... Oh, wait a minute. It was May. It's going to be May next turn. Do I want to take the chance? No, because I don't really have the production points. 3, 6, and 5. There's 11, which would leave me with 3, so I could do another airplane down in Western Africa. Which is what I should have been doing. I've been not doing my job. I wouldn't be able to build Bomber Command this turn if I go ahead and move Force H. I think I kind of want to get Bomber Command out, so I think I'm going to let it wait a turn. I'm doing okay pushing them back in Africa. I really don't need to cut their supply for a turn. July, August, September, that's when I want to have... so by the end of June, I want to have a full strength Force H based in Malta so that I can chop up their supply better. So that's my goal. Alright, so that was Western operations. Soviets we already just did. There is no supply markers on the board. Replacements for the Axis. Oh, heck yes. They were fortunate in that they didn't have to use anything, so they actually have 2 production points that they don't know what to do with. But they are going to spend 15. Puts them down to 2. They're going to bring back their airplanes. And then they're also going to do the one that's in Europe. Germany. We'll bring him down. I keep forgetting it goes around in circles. So, yeah, that's the Germans. And then the Italians, they've got basically 12, because they didn't do a bloody thing, did they? So basically they're 3, 6, 10. Yeah. 3 for this. There I go again. 3 for this one. And then this fleet will come down 2. That's 10. That leaves them with 2. I don't think there's anything. Nothing in the mobilization boxes for us Axis people. So that's their replacements. The Western replacements, they've got 14. What I think I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and clear. See, I want to save 4, so I want to spend 10 at most. So, I know what I was going to do. I'm going to do 3 for this airplane, right? I keep forgetting to do the West African airplane. And I'm going to clear this guy's sorties down 2. So that's 6. 3, 4, 5, 6. Then I'm going to spend 4 on the Med fleet so that it's at full. Is that the fleet or is that the convoy? That's the home fleet. Sorry, not Med fleet, home fleet. So he's at full effectiveness, coming into a possible clear turn in May. Mess up the Benghazi supply route, hopefully. And that leaves me 4 to build Bomber Command, which is what I wanted to have done. So we go to the Russians. The Russians don't want to build their infantry. They're just going to flip their down guys. I guess I should reset this so we can see what the heck's going on. So there's 1 for this shock army, 1 for this infantry, 1 for this infantry, who now has a retreat route, thank God. Didn't realize I had set myself up like that. Maybe it was German attacks. And then 12 more will do. Their airplanes will all come down to 4s. If nothing else, it keeps the German airplanes busy. If I ever get a chance to get away from them, I will, but right now, that doesn't look like it's going to happen. Actually, the only way that they would be able to get away from them is the Germans to take those cities, and I really don't want the Germans to do that, so I'll be very happy just to have to trade sorties here for a while. I can go a whole game year like that if necessary. Alright, so that's the placements for the Soviets. There are no upgrades yet. Mobilization phase for the Axis. Nope, but the West did have mobilization. So let's go back over here. I think I'm going to build the bomber here rather than in anywhere else. So I'm going to spend 4 to get the bomber. I'm just going to go ahead and plop it in London. Tease the German fighters, see if I can get them to come out to play. And it has 4 sorties. Okay. And the Russians don't have any points left to spend. Ta-da. Diplomacy, we're not talking, we're fighting. They haven't conquered Germany yet, so the game's not over. End of turn phase. So we pull up the turn track and the faction card. Put the faction card down here in the corner so we can put things on it. The British get 2 tanks markers. The Russians get their 3 tank markers back. Germans get their tanks marker back. The Russians get their partisans marker. And they get a Urals factory. So this goes up 2 spaces on the turns. And you pull up the national track and you raise their Urals factories up by 1. So now the Russians basically have 6, 7 extra factories. Plus what they're at 6 minus 1, 5. So that's 12. They'll have 24 production points next turn. Right now they're at 0. So the Russian economy is doing all right, even though they lost, Kharkov, Kiev, and Sevastopol. They're still cranking out, close to what the Germans are. We're a little behind them yet. But a few more months and they'll have 9 Urals factories. That's 18 all by itself. So things could get to the point where the Russians don't have to worry so much about production and can spend their money more freely. That was end of turn phase. So that's the end of April. We'll begin with May, where we'll actually roll dice again for the weather. Other than that, that is the second half of April 1942. This is Dren 608. This is the Unconditional Surrender main event scenario. Me, myself, and I play through. And we will see you next time in May of 1942.